Hey people, it's Niaz Toki. Now this story is just over a week old, but it's still very important, so I want to cover it. This is from face-to-faceafrica.com. It's Israel turns to Ghana to back its bid for a seat at the African Union. Israel has called on the Ghanaian government to back its bid for an observer status in the African Union, AU, which it lost in 2002, when the former Organization of African Union, OAU, was dissolved and replaced by the AU. The request was made to Ghana's Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Shirley Ayorkor Botchway, who was in Jerusalem on an official visit at the invitation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. According to Abraham Nagis, an Ethiopian Jew and chairman of the Likud coalition party in the Israeli Knesset who met with the delegation, Africa and Israel have a relationship that dates back to thousands of years, and it's time to come together, reports local Ghanaian media Free News. Okay, well, first off, Africa and Israel. Israel, as we know it, has only existed for about 70 years. So that is not true. Israel has not been in existence for 2,000 years, and it has no real long-standing relationship with any African nation, all right? And if we can see here, if you can see, look at the article I'm seeing, it lists some stories about what they are doing to Africans there. So this one here, watch Israeli MP explain why it's kicking out Africans who don't even have a culture. Wow, that's very close, very close. Kenyan Jewish leader barred from entering Israel, deported to Ethiopia. Wow, they didn't even care to send him back to his own country. And the story on that is that even though it was absolute hell to have his visa approved, they just said, well, this visa's fake, tore it up and sent it back home, basically. And this doesn't even list the stories about the Ethiopian women who have been sterilized when they've immigrated to Israel against their will and their knowledge. And if I can find an article, I'll leave that there. So Israel has not had a good track record with treating Africans fairly. He also added that the readmission of Israel to the AU as an observer will help attract Israeli investment to Africa. Similar call was made to Netanyahu during visits to Liberia to attend the ECOWAS Heads of State Summit in 2017 and then to Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda. Israel should once again be an observer state of the African Union. I firmly believe that it's in your interest too, in the interest of Africa. And I hope all of you will support that goal, Netanyahu told West African leaders in Monrovia last year. Israel strongly believes its absence in the African Union has affected the country in terms of votes in international forums, a result of the country's voice not being heard. I ask for you for support in rejecting anti-Israel bias at the United Nations and in bodies such as the General Assembly, UNESCO, and the Human Rights Council appealed, while adding that Israel is a nation that loves and respects all. In Israel, Jews, Christians, and Muslims live side by side as equal citizens. This is the real Israel. Rival state Palestine was granted observer status in the African Union in 2013, and its leader Mahmoud Abbas has addressed the Union on a number of occasions. A move Israel sees as a disadvantage, as they would need the support of the giant bloc of 54 African countries to push through their expansion agenda into Palestinian territories. Now, I'm not really going to get into Palestine. That is such a huge topic. We could talk for hours and not even scratch the surface. But I do want to say this. What they are talking about just shows that Israel has not really come as a partner. It's come in a very self-interested manner. I mean, all they really are interested in is what Africa can provide in terms of votes and PR internationally. Despite Israel being a very rich and developed country with access to a lot of capital, they haven't talked about anything that they're going to contribute in terms of development, aid, investment, or jobs that they could bring. So on that basis alone, they should be rejected because it's not coming. I mean, at least the Chinese, as bad as they are, they come in bringing a lot of aid and development loans. What we are hearing from the Israelis is just what they're going to get, which doesn't seem very fair for the 54 African nations who are not seeming to get anything. The Ghanaian minister ushered Israel of Ghana's support and pledged to work hard to ensure that Israel gets her voice heard on the African continent. Meanwhile, Israel is keen on kicking out African asylum seekers after unsuccessful threats of illegal deportation of the about 40,000 people, imprisonment, and even suspension of a relocation deal by the UN Refugee Agency to send them to Western countries. The country later introduced a new law in August 2018 which allows the withholding of 20% of salaries of African asylum seekers, which can be only reclaimed after they leave the country. So they've basically legitimized discrimination against another group of people. The so-called deposit law requires employers of migrants to give the state 20% of their salaries and to store an additional 16% towards a pension fund which will be equally inaccessible until the migrants decide to leave the country. Worse, employers of migrants have also been directed to pay an additional tax to discourage them from employing the asylum seekers, who are already grappling with finding jobs. Since 2009, only 8 Eritreans and 2 Sudanese have been recognized as refugees in Israel. Another 200 Sudanese from Darfur were recently granted humanitarian status. Currently, 27,500 Eritreans and 7,800 Sudanese are seeking asylum status to start a living in Israel. The African Union is yet to take action on the fate of those Africans who are in distress. A decision could be made on Israel's bid for observer status in the African Union during the 23rd Ordinary Session of the Assembly, which will be held on February 10th and 11th, 2019 at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Okay, so I just want to give my thoughts. Now, we already covered that they've not really come to the table with anything to offer apart from what they want to get from the greater relations. We've also covered that that there's been a lot of racism and mistreatment of Africans in terms of just the way people visiting are treated, the employment laws, the refugee laws, and what else was there? And just the general disdain that is shown by at least the leadership in Israel. So on these bases alone, there shouldn't be an observer status because it's being really rewarded for not doing anything and actually acting contrary to Africa's interests. And the fact that the Ghanaians are doing this is very suspect. Now, we've already had them okay a base for the Americans in, of course, Ghana. Now, Jason Black always talks about getting on code, and the Ghanaians really are not on code. Okay, there are a lot of problems with interlopers in Africa, specifically the Chinese, who are coming in with their economic machine and pilfering and taking all of Africa's resources, as well as just having sex with the women and leaving these illegitimate children just lying around, not taking care of them. And adding Israel into the mix is just bringing more interlopers who are not really bringing anything to the table. And I would suggest this, that if you're planning a trip to Ghana, you should just not go there. I think that the Ghanaians should not be rewarded for this behavior, which is not good for the African family. Anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.